Welcome to Living on the Edge. My name's Chip Ingram, and I'm your host, and I'm sure glad you joined us. We're in a series on relationships, and we're going to talk about a very important relationship of, as Christians, believer to believer. And I want to talk about how to experience authentic community. You know, as a pastor for 25 years, I have seen scores and scores of people who come to church. They sit, they listen, they hear me or a pastor speak, they walk out the door, and they still experience the number one problem in America. It's called loneliness. You know, how do you break through that? How do you get to know people? Where do you find that deep, rich relationship where the reality of Christ and the love of God gets exchanged from person to person? That's today on Living on the Edge. We're going to learn how to experience authentic community. Well, as we get going, sometimes you can get in session, and you lose sight of the big picture. So I just want you, no notes and no pencils. I want you just mentally to follow with me before we jump in. God has a dream for your life. And that dream, the the Reader's Digest version, is in Romans. If you want to experience the richness of his dream for your life, first of all, it's relational. And second, it's a non-performance. It's based on his grace. It's not earning his favor. It's understanding intimacy and relationship. And his dream plays out in verse 1, how a surrendered life. Verse 2, a life that is separate from this world's values. Verse 3 through 8, it's a life that is a sober self-assessment. Those are the beginnings of a real life where you experience God's dream and his grace, what he wants to do in you and through you. But now we're going to talk about not your relationship with God or yourself or even the world system, but the family of believers. And God has a plan, and a big part of that plan is how we relate to one another. I'll tell you how important this is. It was a little over a year ago that my father died, 83, 84 years old. And you hear stories in passing. He was a Marine. He was disciplined. He was an alcoholic. And in his mid-50s, he came to Christ. And he had a lot of baggage, and 3.5 pack a day guy, and watching his life little by little change. And well, part of that hurt and part of those struggles, I went through that kind of wounded son. We had to work through a number of issues over about a decade and a half. And my dad was from the, World War II generation, and hard to express his feelings, hard to articulate things, hard to sort of get involved with my kids and build relationship. And so I knew it was in him, but it was so hard for it to come out. And then my mother died, and he later remarried a very godly, wonderful woman, and they had a great life together. And, but yet it's like we would get about this close, and you just longed for that to happen. And, we would share, and we would talk, and then he had a very unusual disease, and he was dying, and it was a sort of a long process. And then I got a call in February, and they said, if you want to see your dad, and this had happened kind of once before, but you need to come really pretty soon. He's not doing well at all. And I had a good friend who has a little plane that he said, he knew about my dad. When it happens, don't you dare go drive there. You call me, we can be at the little airport in 30 minutes, and I'll take you. This plane, it's for my business. God gave it to me. I just want to help you. I said, wow. And so, you're a little uncomfortable asking someone like that, but it happens, and I get the call. I call him, and he said, what's your watch say? And I told him, he said, I'll be there in 27 minutes. And he flew me to Durham from Atlanta. And, it was dark, and we get a car, and he and his son drive me, and they let me off. We'll be here in the car. We'll pray for you. And I went up and saw my dad, and, he was, not doing real well, and he was kind of having a low time, and his wife was there and some other people, and we said goodbye. I said, I'll just stay here with Dad for a little while. And everybody left, and it was literally like a gift from God. He popped up. Chip, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good, Dad. How you doing? And for an hour and a half, it was like, these are your final words. I'll tell you what, I don't know what all the issues were and family issues and what alcoholism, blah, blah. It was like, whew. We had the best talk ever. And we shared hearts, and we talked about throwing baseball as a kid, and we talked about just issues and dreams and, things that I long to hear as a man. There's something your dad can give you that no one else can. And for an hour and a half, he shared the most significant things of my lifetime with him. And here's the deal. When you know you're going to die, you tell people the things that are absolutely most important to you. And I got to taste that. And Jesus knew he was going to die. And on the very last night before he died, he gathered those that he loved and those that were closest to him. And he said, I got a new commandment for you. And he gave him a command that's about how we relate to one another and the stakes, how important it is about how we love each other and what it means if we do it and what it means if we don't. And after he gave him that command, then he went into the garden. And we get the longest recorded time of his personal prayer life, and where he talks to the Father and he begins to think about what it was like when in absolute perfection, the Godhead, before he took on human flesh. And he began to express to him these men that God had given him out of the world and those people that God would give him later and the glory, that what he wanted to share with them. And he says, Father, make them one, even as we are one. And with that same idea, this prayer, this passion, the last thing on the last night is what he prayed about how we would treat one another and the implications for those who don't yet know him. Listen to the command, John 13, a new commandment I give to you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. He says, love each other how? The way I loved you. How was it? Unconditional, sacrificial, devotion, open, vulnerable. Not when it was convenient. I met you where you were. I want you all, guys, to love each other the way I loved you. Here's why. That's how the world's going to know. The greatest, most powerful apologetic in all the world is not out of a book or an argument. The greatest apologetic in the world is Christians loving Christians radically, authentically, and from the heart in ways that the world goes, where do you all get that? And after that command and the Passover turning into the Lord's Supper, he goes out and he prays. And I've taken an excerpt as we eavesdrop on Jesus. Think of this. The Creator in the second person of the Trinity speaking to the Father on the last night of what's most important to him. My prayer is not for them alone, speaking of his disciples. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. Guess who that is? That's us. That all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us. Why? So the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me. May they be brought to complete unity to let the world know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Father, listen to his voice. Father, I want those you have given me to be with me. I want them to be with me where I am and to see my glory, the glory that you've given me because you loved me before the creation of the world. We're going to talk about serving in love and developing authentic community. And this is not this is how to make your life feel better. This is not, this is how to develop better relationships, and here's 7 steps for better relationships. What we're talking about is being the answer to the prayer of Jesus and obeying the command of Jesus that said how we treat one another and how we love one another is at the core and the primary power for a watching world to know whether God, in fact, actually sent him. And I've shared a little bit about my journey and my story. And now, I was a skeptic. I'd never opened the Bible. I thought these people were Jesus freaks in a cult. Now, forgive me, because I love the Fellowship of Christian Athletes now. That was the camp I was at. And, I heard this guy talk every day a little bit out of the Bible. I still wasn't buying. I actually read the Bible that one day, so at least I was starting to get open. But you know what turned my heart? we did all these athletic games and stuff, and they threw a bag of ice, and there would be a ring of us of 10 or 12 guys. We'd share hearts and talk a little bit, and the fullback for Illinois was there, and he was my huddle leader. And the wide receiver at the time for Atlanta Falcons, I don't know any of their names, about mid-70s. And I'm this, wringing wet, skinny, tiny little white kid, and that has this basketball scholarship at a small school, because I'm a small school guy. And I'm not good enough to play at a really big school, but I'm just thrilled to get to play at a small school. But I got to make sure I make the team and do well, and so that's my dream, and that's why I went to the camp. And I'm hearing all this stuff about Jesus, and I just don't know what to believe. And then I watched this wide receiver. I'll never forget, he had green gym shorts on. In my mind, on TV, those wide receivers, don't they look like tiny little guys? They're only tiny little guys because the guys on the line are 330 pounds. And I can still remember, weird in your mind, this guy had thighs like this. And this is real important and was very muscular, because my view of Christianity was feminine. My view of Christianity was, this is for dopes. This is for people who can't think. This is for people who need a crutch. This is the opiate of the masses. This is people who need religion. I don't need all that junk. That was all my insecurity coming out. And I watched this guy, and they were walking, and the fullback obviously had something troubling going on in his life. And I'd never seen this ever in my life. I was 17 years old, going to turn 18 in about a month. And that wide receiver put his arm around this big fullback. These are two big guys. And I'd never seen a man put his arm around another man. And they began to talk, and he listened. And I could hear parts of the conversation. And then, I'm just behind. They don't know me. I'm like a gnat. I'm just some little runny kid walking behind them. And more and more I could overhear the conversation. And I heard a grown man share the depths of his heart and his hurts. And I saw another grown man love him and accept him and express the love of Christ. And I'll never forget, I had this emotion welling up inside. And I'm just this kid, walking behind him like this. And I'll never forget. And, I heard the messages in the Bible and this camp and this stuff about Jesus. And all I know, I came to a moment I thought, I don't know what they have. That's what I want. I don't know what they have. But I know I'm an insecure, driven, over-the-top hypocrite, and I don't like me, and I pretend, and I project, and I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know where I belong. And I can set goals, and I can,